Fearless, unapologetic, and unbelievably quick. Juan Pablo Montoya was all of these things and more, and on the 20th anniversary of the Colombian's debut in Formula One, there is no better time to look back on one of the sport's most colourful characters who in only 6 seasons left an unforgettable mark on the sport. But what made Juan Pablo Montoya in a relatively short amount of time so revered, and why did his career end early when he was just on the cusp of winning championships? When you look at the career of Juan Pablo Montoya, I think it's fair to say that he's more remembered for the kind of driver and person that he was, and some of the legendary battles and incidents that he was part of. Now, don't get me wrong, he still had a very strong career that a lot of drivers would have been proud of. In 6 seasons, 4 of which he spent with Williams and 2 of them with McLaren, he started 94 races, claiming 30 podiums, 13 pole positions, and 7 Grand Prix wins. His stats are actually very impressive when you consider how short his career was, but as I mentioned, he's one of those drivers that was so polarizing and so different to the rest of the grid that he's more remembered for the very tough on-track battles that he had, and then his unfiltered character that he wasn't afraid to show off the track. Juan Pablo straddled that line of being amazingly quick and box office to watch, but also not being afraid to speak his mind and create the odd friction with other drivers, even when those other drivers were his teammates. The best analogy I can make is that he is probably the only driver who's ever driven in Formula One that has both a best overtakes compilation on YouTube as well as a best fights compilation as well. Maybe that gives you an indication of what kind of guy he was, but that gave him an edge even when he came into Formula One that very few drivers had. He was fearless, and if anything, he seemed to thrive on a little bit of chaos to light a fire under him, which only made him drive faster. His first big moment, which perhaps would also go on to define his career, was in only his 3rd ever race in Brazil. He was lucky enough that in the year 2001, Williams had really gotten their act together and actually built a really good car which was powered by the monstrous BMW engine, which was the best engine on the grid, even if it did have a tendency to blow up. As a rookie in P2 chasing down Michael Schumacher, after an early safety car which had just pitted, he pulled off an outrageously late braking move, almost barging Schumacher out of the way, and almost certainly pushed him a little bit on the grass to make sure that he didn't come back for more. It was a move that made F1 sit up and notice the young Juan Pablo Montoya, and although he absorbed the pressure from Schumacher and was running in P1 and looked to be set to win his first ever Formula One Grand Prix in only his 3rd ever race, he got taken out by a backmarker called Verstappen, that's Jos Verstappen by the way, from the lead of the race, and sadly that was that. Ironically, that also would not be the last time a backmarker would take out a leading car in the Brazilian Grand Prix with a Verstappen involved, so maybe there was a little bit of weird karma going on. Either way, Juan Pablo Montoya had arrived in F1, and although he got taken out, the world was in awe of that audacious overtake on the man that very few were brave enough to go wheel to wheel with. This would not be the final time, however, that Montoya and Schumacher came to blows both on and off the track, and when you look back at the legend of Juan Pablo Montoya, there is no getting away from his equally legendary rivalry with the man that many people feared back in the early 2000s. Montoya's career is almost synonymous with his Schumacher rivalry, more so than perhaps his actual driving and achievements as well. And so, to explain what made their rivalry so special both on and off the track, there is no better person to ask other than from one of the biggest Schumacher fans I know, Sam from the Perspective F1 channel.
Growing up during the Schumacher dominance era, it's no surprise that I'm a massive Michael fan, and why I consider him probably the greatest Formula One driver of all time. But there was a certain man from Colombia who made life not so easy for Michael at times. When I look back at Michael's rivals, Juan Pablo Montoya was one that I quietly barracked for. What you need to understand is that Michael had an aura about him that was almost unmatched, but Montoya was a savage in his own way. He didn't care how good you were or how many titles you had. He had strong belief in his own ability and fully backed himself at every single race weekend. I want to focus, of course, on one of the most infamous battles between these two, and that was at Imola in 2004. If you aren't familiar with this, let me break it down for you. Montoya was on the attack and went for a bold move around the outside at Tosa, which would then see Michael push him off the track. It wasn't too serious of an incident, there wasn't too much damage, no real danger, but that didn't stop Juan Pablo Montoya from letting Michael know that in the post-race press conference. Michael explained that the move was just unexpected and that he didn't see him. While the footage was being played right in front of the drivers in the room, Montoya just said it how it was.
Oh no, he didn't see me there. Well, no chance. You know, you gotta either be blind or stupid to not see me, but you know, it's racing.
This is Juan Pablo Montoya saying it how it is in a nutshell. It was the case of two dominant personalities going at it together on the track. Montoya is the perfect example of a relentless rival that will just push you all the way and just always be there. He was a guy that was just constantly willing to be on the limit no matter what. We'd also see this earlier in Melbourne back in 2002. Michael and Juan would battle it out after Trulli's retirement, with the two drivers going back and forth, trying to pull away from each other and secure the win. The response to the Imola incident and the pure relentless pressure that Juan Pablo Montoya put Michael under at times really does remain as one of my favourite Formula One rivalries. The perfect example of a fearless Formula One driver who no doubt deserved at least one world championship in his career.
Montoya and Schumacher would have many a battle, and both also did not mind a bit of needle in the media either. And in a way, that's what made Montoya so special. He almost seemed like a driver from a different era, possibly the 80s or early 90s, someone who in an alternative universe would not mind one bit going wheel to wheel with a Senna or Piquet, and also not being afraid of the consequences if something went wrong. Montoya, however, despite his raw and natural ability in an era where F1 was becoming a lot more corporate and commercialized, was a driver who also at times struggled to hold himself back. When he made the bizarre move to McLaren in 2005, it looked like it would be a move that would end in tears, because whilst at Williams the competitiveness and fire of Frank Williams suited the character of Montoya, at McLaren it was always either Ron's way or the highway. The biggest thing that went against Juan Pablo Montoya when you read about him and listen from the people that were actually there is that the thing he lacked was that consistency, that ultimate focus, and that unrelenting need to win a world championship. On track, he was as quick as anyone on his day and could also pull a quali lap out of nowhere, but in the races he could also very easily either spin or stick it into another driver. The same also goes for some of his off-track exploits as well, with the most famous example being the tennis injury. In 2005, when Montoya had just moved to McLaren, a team in which in 2005 had a very fast car, if also an unreliable car, which did manage to challenge for a title with Kimi Raikkonen, just 2 races into his McLaren career, he injured his shoulder when he was away from Formula One and had to miss 2 races during a pivotal season. In the media, Juan Pablo Montoya said that this was due to a tennis incident, although many people thought that it was more likely down to an unnecessary crash on a dirt bike. Either way, neither McLaren nor Ron Dennis understandably were very happy, and the mystery even to this day continues, with no one except for Montoya knowing definitively what happened. Although Martin Whitmarsh, who was Ron Dennis's right-hand man and later became the team principal of McLaren, said in an interview quite a few years later when asked about the incident, "Playing tennis is tough on a quad bike." It was just these little details that never quite clicked for Montoya, and whilst he definitely had the speed to become a world champion, in the end we got a pretty good comparison between him and Kimi Raikkonen in 05 and 06, before Kimi actually did go on and win the title in 07. In the end, Montoya, being the free spirit that he was, decided midway through the 2006 season that he had had enough and wanted to leave McLaren and go race in NASCAR. The thing about him is that although sometimes he lacked that ultimate focus, he knew what he wanted, and he didn't want to be somewhere where he didn't feel happy inside. Unlike some drivers, he didn't have the patience to brave it out, and McLaren obliged and midway through the 2006 season let Montoya walk as his short but very explosive F1 career came to a sudden close. And of course, the end of Montoya's time is a very interesting historical crossroad in F1, because with Fernando Alonso already signed on to McLaren for 2007 a year early, and with Raikkonen departing for Ferrari at the end of the season as well, Montoya leaving opened up a seat alongside Alonso, which in the end went to a young GP2 champion by the name of Lewis Hamilton. I wonder if he managed to ever achieve anything in that car. Anyway, don't get it twisted though, Montoya had talent coming out of his pockets, and even just looking at the number of different categories that he's competed in over the course of his career, and is still competing in at the age of 45, I must say, he was a born racer, but not someone who was born to be dedicated to just Formula One. In the end, Juan Pablo Montoya is not just a legend in Formula One, but one of motorsport's all-time greats, having won the Formula 3000 Championship, the IndyCar Championship, the Daytona 24-Hour 3 times, a championship in sports cars, and then on top of that, winning the Indy 500 and winning multiple races and Grand Prix in both NASCAR and Formula One. Juan Pablo Montoya was truly a driver's driver, an unapologetic character who lit up the world of F1, and a driver who most likely we'll never see again. So there you have it. I hope you did enjoy this video of me taking a look at one of the most outlandish drivers in F1 history. I want to say a big thank you to Sam for taking part in the video. Don't forget to check out his channel, the link will be at the very top of the description. And if you guys did enjoy this video, then don't forget to drop a like and smash that subscribe button as well for more quality content coming up very, very soon. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.